Okay, so let us look at the restoration period and the poem Absalom and Achitophel by Dryden. Absalom and Achitophel by Dryden. So as we said, the restoration period spanned 1660 and 1700. We also said that it was a period in English history marked by the restoration of monarchy to the English throne in the return of Charles II to the throne, and with that restoration came other forms of restoration, like the restoration of peace, the reopening of the theaters, the chartering of the Royal Society, the patronage of writers, and we also said that these factors helped the literature of the time to grow and produced such writers as Dryden. Who was so important that the age was named after him, which is the age of Dryden. So Absalom and Achitophel captures what we might call the restoration politics. The poem Absalom and Achitophel captures what we might call the restoration politics, the politics of the restoration. Now, what is the politics of the restoration all about? The politics of the restoration is all about throne ascension. It's all about throne ascension. That is who comes to the throne, who succeeds the current king. Politics of restoration is about the politics of succession. It's the politics of succession. So if I ask you, describe the restoration politics, what I'm asking you to talk about is the politics of who comes to the throne. All the events, all the political events that were related to who should rule after Charles II. Who should rule after Charles II? That is the policies that we are talking about. Remember in our last class we said that Charles did not spend time with his royal wife, Catherine of Braganza. But he spent most of his time with the mistresses and fathered many illegitimate sons who could not ascend the throne because they were not made on the royal bed. So as Charles grew older, the people were concerned about who will come to the throne after him, after he had died. They were particularly worried that the throne will go to Charles II's brother, the Duke of York, by name James, who was a Catholic. You need to understand that Charles II was a diplomatic king. So, though he was a Catholic by heart, he presented himself to the people as a Protestant, an Anglican, so that he would be more accepted. But within himself, he knew that he was Catholic. He wanted peace to reign. So that's why we said he was diplomatic, he was tactful, because he knew the issues that undergirded the politics of his time. So he didn't want conflicts. He knew how to manage the people. He gave to each faction, the religious faction, the political faction, what they wanted. But he knew where to draw the line and said, beyond this point we cannot go. That was why we said that he was diplomatic. So the people of England were worried that after Charles died, the throne will go to a Catholic king, James, who is the Duke of York. James, the Duke of York. And the people did not like that. And the king did not produce a legitimate heir. And so at the point, the people wanted Charles II to legitimize one of his illegitimate sons so that the person can take over the throne. They wanted to legitimize one of his illegitimate sons so that this son would take over the throne. The name of this son was James Scott. name of his son was James Scott, the Duke of Monmouth. Of course, you know that the Protestants were in the majority, so they were the ones who were not happy about the prospects of being ruled by a Catholic king. And so they wanted to force Charles to legitimize the Duke of Monmouth, who was well loved by the people, so that he can rule after Charles. And they did this through the instrumentality of the Parliament. The instrumentality of the Parliament. Remember that the English politics has always had the dialectic between the Tory and the Whig. The Tory and the Whig. The Tories refers to royalty, the Whig refers to Parliament. So the Parliament was full of Protestants. They were the majority. The majority in the Parliament were the Protestants. And so they wanted to force the king's hand and ensure that he chose James Scott to be king. But Charles wanted to reserve the throne for his Catholic brother. Charles wanted to reserve the throne for his Catholic brother. So the plots and the intrigues that followed these events constitute what we call the Restoration politics. At a point, the head of Parliament, by name Earl of Shaftesbury, Anthony Cooper, persuaded James Scott to be paraded around the streets and announced as the one the king prefers to rule after him, in an attempt to force the king's hand to make James Scott the heir to the throne. But this backfires because the king suspends parliament, just as when they want to meet and propose an exclusion bill that will ensure that James does not come to the throne. Just as they want to meet to propose the exclusion bill, that will ensure that James will be excluded from the throne. Charles II dissolved Parliament in 1681, and throughout his reign, Parliament never met again. Throughout his reign, Parliament never met again. Shaftesbury was sent to prison, and then he was tried, but because the Parliament is full of Protestants or Whigs, he was not convicted, but he died a year or two after, his spirit having been broken. When Charles II finally died, James came to the throne as James II. So this is what the politics of restoration is all about. Who comes to the throne? It's the politics of succession. Who comes to the throne after Charles II? And all the events that are implicated in that narrative. So the poem Absalom and Achitophel, written by John Dryden, captures the restoration politics as described. John Dryden was born in 1631 and he lived until 1700. So you could see that he is a definition of the restoration figure. He was born in 1631. John Dryden was born in 1631 and he lived until 1700. He was poet laureate. He was made poet laureate in 1668. He was made poet laureate in 1668. He was a poet and he was a dramatist. He was a poet and he was a dramatist. The best restoration playwright. And he was a national poet. He was a national poet, which is why he was awarded with the greatest honor any poet could have. That being a national poet will mean that his poetry By being a national poet, we mean that his poetry always captured the important events in the nation, the English nation. Poems always captured the important events in the English nation. He attended the Westminster School, and the Trinity College, Cambridge. He attended the Westminster School and the Trinity College, Cambridge, and the Trinity College, Cambridge, Trinity. He graduated in 1654 with his bachelor's degree. His first poem was entitled Heroic Stanzas. First poem was entitled Heroic Stanzas. Published in 1659. The poem was in commemoration of Cromwell's death. Was in commemoration of Cromwell's death. Remember, his poem always has a national outlook. Another important work of Dryden that you need to know about is Essay of the Dramatic Poesy. Essay of the Dramatic Poesy. By poesy, we mean poetry, published in 1668. Before he was made poet laureate in 1668, he was made poet laureate in 1668. In 1670, he was made historiographer royal. In 1670, he was made historiographer royal. His poem Macflegno was published in 1682. Flecknoe was published in 1682. A year after the publication of Absalom and Achitophel. Dryden himself was affected by the Restoration politics. Dryden himself was affected by the Restoration politics. When Charles II was ruling, he was a Protestant. When Charles II was ruling, Dryden was a Protestant, which explains why he got all these offices, which gave him a lot of money, prestige, dignity in society. For instance, he was the poet laureate, was the historiographer royal. When Charles II died in 1685, and James II came to the throne, Dryden converted to Catholicism. Telling everyone that he does that not for political maneuvering, but because he really believes that Catholicism is the way to go. That is convicted in the principles of Catholicism. It's not just to maintain it, it's not because he wants to maintain his political offices. Because probably he knew that if he continued to be a Protestant, he would lose his political offices. Alright? So, because James II was a true-blooded Catholic, unlike Charles II, who hid his Catholic leaning, James II planted his Catholicism through the flag path. Even before he became king, which is why people were afraid of him. So, when James II came to the throne, Dryden converted to Catholicism for political survival, but that's not what he told people. He said it was not for political survival, that it was because he really believed that he was a true Catholic. Alright? But then, James was not a tactful king. James II was not a tactful king. He was not diplomatic at all. His lifestyle, his utterances his policies deepened the divide in the English society. He didn't rule like Charles II, who ruled in such a way that it brought people together. It promoted unity. He was reckless in his utterances, he was reckless in his lifestyle, and he didn't promote unity at all. And that was why he fled the throne. He ran away. People rose against him, and he took to his heels. He abdicated. And then the Protestants, William of Orange and Mary, came to the throne. In 1689. Yes, it is the Orange and Mary came to the throne in 1689. So remember that right from the time of Henry VIII, English politics has always been that if the Protestants ruled, if the Protestant king ruled, the Protestants will rejoice, will be happy, and the Catholics will be persecuted. Yes. And whenever a Catholic king ruled, the Catholics will rejoice, and the Protestants will run for their life. So it continued like that, even in the time of Queen Elizabeth, the time of Edward, up till the time of Charles I, who was beheaded, and up to Charles II, who was able to manage the crisis by uniting the nation by his action. Same thing with James II. So when William and Mary came to the throne in 1689, in what has been called the Glorious Revolution. That is called the Glorious the Bloodless Revolution. Our friend Charles Dryden could not convert back to Protestantism anymore. Because I already told people that it was not for survival. It was really a true-blooded Catholic. That's why he converted when James II came to the throne. Okay? So when William and Mary came, William and Mary are true Protestants. And so he could not go back to Protestantism. And that's why he lost his offices. He converted to Catholicism. He was able to keep his offices, Fred Laureate, and all the benefits. But now he could not, when William and Mary came to the throne, he could not convert back. and he suffered for it. Remember that politics this time was very cruel if you did not align with the religious principles of the king. You were excluded from public services, you were excluded from public schools, you were just like a nobody. That's why he lost. So that's why I said that John Dryden was affected, himself was affected by the politics of the Restoration. So all this defection by politicians that we see today, just so that they can survive politically, is not a new thing. People have always tried to see whether they could make the right decision, political decision at any given time, so that they will not suffer. Including writers. And he lost these offices to his rival, which is more painful. He lost these offices to his rival. We'll talk about that when we want to discuss Mark Flegner. He lost the office to his rival, his enemy, by name Thomas Shadwell. So we'll discuss more about that when we want to talk about Mark Flegner. So, but for now, we focus our attention on Absalom and Achitophel, which ingeniously discusses the Restoration politics, usually the plot and the intrigue and the tricks. Usually the plot, intrigue, and tricks. The scheme. So the poem Absalom and Achitophel is inspired by the popish plot crisis of 1678. Popish plot crisis of 1678. This plot led to power struggle between the Whigs and the Tories. And who are the Whigs? The Parliament. Who are the Tories? The supporters of the crown, the supporters of the king. So the Whigs are the supporters of Parliament, the parliamentarians themselves, and the Tories are the supporters of the king, supporters of royalty, and the supporters of the crown. Even till today, you still hear Tories in English politics. So the people have always feared that the Catholics were plotting to take over the throne. So when we say popish, it's taken from the word pope, the head of the Catholic Church on the earth. The head of the Catholic Church on the earth. The story about this popish plot goes as follows. Remember that the background to it is in the fact that Charles II does not have a legitimate heir to the throne, and if he dies, the throne will fall to his Catholic brother. That's the people's fear. And so the popish plot is about the exploitation of this fear by mischief makers. So that we always have people like that in society. They're always instigating problems, looking for ways to cause issues. So a man by name Titus Oates, and the name Titus, we can say Titus, if you wish, right? So a man by name Titus Oates alleged claimed that there was a Jesuit plot. There was a Jesuit plot to assassinate the king. That there was a Jesuit plot. The Jesuit was a particular order in the Catholic Church, order of priests in the Catholic Church. Was there Jesuit plot to assassinate the king, burn down London, burn down London. Burn down London. Massacre Protestants. Massacre Protestants. Massacre Protestants. And re-establish the Roman Catholic Church in England. This was the allegation. There was a Jesuit plot to assassinate the king, burn London, massacre Protestants, and re-establish the Catholic Church in England, which was what the people feared the most. Remember, right from the time of Henry VIII, the English people had been Protestants. The English people have been Protestants. They had their own Anglican church, the English church, which broke away from the Catholic Church. Because Henry VIII wanted an heir to the throne, but could not have it with his current wife, and wanted the Pope to annul the marriage so that he can remarry, and have a male heir. When the Pope refused to do that, he broke away from the Catholic Church and formed the Church of England, of which he was the head. With him being the head of the Church of England, he was able to do as he wants. In fact, he married up to 6 wives. He spent with them anytime he wanted. To have an heir, just to have an heir to the throne. So from that time up to the point that we are talking about, we always had this struggle between the Protestant and the Catholic, and the struggle is never divorced from politics, because politics is where power lies, and with power you can do a lot of good or a lot of evil. With power you can take control. So that's why this religious crisis were always linked to politics. We all want to know the religion, the religious sect of the king, because our fate depends on it. Whether we will eat, whether we will be happy, whether we will even be alive, will depend on which sect the king is. Is he a Catholic or a Protestant? Sir Edmund Barry Godfrey. Sir Edmund Barry Godfrey. Sir Edmund Barry Godfrey. Sir Edmund Barry Godfrey was a prominent London Justice of the Peace. JP was a prominent London Justice of the Peace. He was murdered some days after receiving Titus Oates' testimony for safekeeping. After receiving Titus Oates' testimony, he was murdered. Now, most people knew Titus Oates to be a man of questionable character, and so his words were likely not to be believed. His allegations were likely not to be believed, but something happened. Apart from the death of Sir Edmund Barry, papers were found in the Duke of York's secretary's office. Papers were found in the Duke of York's secretary's office. Remember, at this time, James was the Duke of York, and you know his Catholicism very well. It was firebrand, and the flag was flying all over the place. So papers were found in the Duke of York secretary's office, which revealed that the secretary had received correspondence. That's letters. I received correspondence. That's letters from the confessor of Louis the 14th. Louis the 14th of France. Louis the 14th of France, about the re-establishment of Roman Catholic Church in England. There was a letter like that. There were letters like that about the re-establishment of the Roman Catholic Church in England. With the death of Sir Godfrey and this revelation, tempers rose, the people were angry, and so many Catholics were killed before order was restored. Before order was restored. It was due to this that Parliament wanted to force Charles II to. It was due to this incident that Parliament, led by Earl of Shaftesbury, wanted to force Charles II to legitimize James Scott, the Duke of Monmouth, and make him heir to the throne. because of this supposed Catholic plot. Not only that, they wanted to make a bill to exclude James, the Duke of York, from ever ascending the English throne. But because Charles wanted the throne to be kept for his brother, and of course Charles was a Catholic by heart, it is rumored that when he was dying, he received the last rites of the sacrament of the Catholic Church to show you where his faith was. But he fronted himself to the people as what? Protestant. So he wanted to reserve the throne for his Catholic brother, and that's why he made a bold political move to dissolve Parliament, and it ensured that Parliament never met again throughout his reign. Now, in writing Absalom and Achitophel, Dryden draws largely from the Bible story, especially the one concerning David and his beloved son Absalom. In writing Absalom and Achitophel, Dryden draws largely from the Bible story of David and his son Absalom, because there was a clear parallel between this story and that of Charles II and his son James Scott. Because like Absalom, James Scott was handsome, charismatic, and well loved by the people. In fact, this parallel was already being drawn in sermons by the clergy of the time, seeing Charles II as David, the great king, who could not have a child by his wife, Michelle, because she was barren. And Charles II, who could not have a child by Catherine of Braganza, because he could not spend time with her. He didn't spend much time with her. Like David, who had Absalom by another woman, Charles II had James Scott by another woman. And just as the people seduced Absalom to rise against his father, David, the same way the people seduced seduced James Scott to act against his father, Charles II. And of course, the two were put down because they were rebels. And when the context of politics in the context of the Bible, one of the greatest sins anyone could commit is the sin of rebellion. Right? In fact, it is the first sin because it was committed by Lucifer himself when he tried to rise against God. I feel like I'm preaching to someone this morning. And so rebellion is regarded as a heinous act, whether in the eyes of God or in the eyes of man. And you could see that Lucifer's rebellion was put down as he was thrown out of heaven, his highly exalted position, and brought down to earth and to hell to dwell. Absalom's rebellion was put down through death. There was a great war, and in the end, Absalom dies a very painful death because he was very handsome, had long hair. I think the haircut was as his chariot was passing through an oak tree. The hair was caught in the oak tree and it was like hanging there. You must understand that James II had James Scott beheaded. James II had James Scott beheaded. So this story is told in the book of 2 Samuel from chapters 13 to 18. The book of 2 Samuel, chapter 13 to chapter 18. Amen, somebody.
Amen. Hallelujah.
So immediately James came to the throne, he had him beheaded. This is how all rebellions are dealt with very seriously. Okay? So if you read through those Bible portions, you will see the story of Absalom and how it relates to David, the rebellion and how it was put down. And because that is where Absalom and Achitophel draws inspiration from. And so we can say that Dryden's Absalom and Achitophel has biblical allusion as its major poetic element or device. Has what? Biblical allusion as its major poetic element or device. So, what is biblical allusion? What is biblical allusion? What is biblical allusion? So biblical allusion is a narrative technique whereby a reference is made to the Bible in a story. And a reference is made to the Bible in a story that is biblical allusion. So in this story, the key characters are David. In the poem, you see David as a character, but know that David stands for Charles II. You read the poem, Absalom and Achitophel. You will see David, but whenever you see David, think of David as Charles II, because David represents Charles II in Absalom and Achitophel. In the story, you'll meet Absalom. Think of Absalom as James Scott, Duke of Monmouth. In the story, you meet Michelle, David's barren wife. Think of her as Catherine of Braganza, except that Catherine had a female daughter by name Mary, who came to the throne after James II with William of Orange. And then you meet Achitophel, the wise counselor. Think of him as Shaftesbury. Think of him as who? Shaftesbury. This guy here. Anthony Cooper, the head of parliament, is represented there as Achitophel. Dryden wrote this poem as his way of supporting Charles II. Remember, he was a national poet, and his poems always had something to do with the events in the nation. So he wrote Absalom and Achitophel to offer his support to the king at the time of this crisis. He wrote the poem as a way of supporting the king, bringing support to the king at the time of this crisis. But he has subtle ways of criticizing the king and his excesses. In the poem, the people of England are referred to the Jews. They are the Jews. In the poem, the English people are depicted as the Jews, God's pampered people, who are always complaining, murmuring, who are never satisfied with their king. A second part of this poem appeared in 1682. It was worked on by Nahum Tate. Nahum Tate. The poem has over 1,000 lines. The poem has over 1,000 lines. Precisely, the poem has 1,031 lines in its current state, which qualifies it to be a mock heroic. Qualifies to be a mock heroic epic. Qualifies to be a mock heroic epic. Because of its length. But it's not only the length that makes it mock heroic, there are other characteristics. It's not only the length that makes it mock heroic epic, there are other characteristics. One is that it is satiric. It is satire. Satiric nature. That it is satiric in nature. Because it uses the form of the epic to tell the story. Two, it is written in heroic couplets. It is written in heroic couplets. So as we said in the previous class, heroic couplets has a stanza of 2 lines written in iambic pentameter with a rhyme scheme. And we are going to take the first lines of this poem, Absalom and Achitophel, to show that it's written in a heroic couplet. The opening lines say, in pious times a priestcraft did begin, for polygamy was made a sin. The man on many was bad kind, a one-to-one was cursively confined. In pious times a priestcraft did begin, before polygamy was made a sin. When man on many multiplied his kind, a one-to-one was cursively confined. Take that much, we will really take that much. In pious times, a priestcraft would begin, for polygamy was made a sin. A man on many multiplied his kind, a one-to-one was cursively confined. It's talking about the glorious era when polygamy was allowed, not today's world when it is only one man to one wife. So, the first thing you do when you want to check if a poem has some meter, because we are looking for meter, is to check for the regularity in the distribution of syllables in the poem. Okay? So you have to count the syllables. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay? So this, we'll take this as 2 then. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So the syllable is when you tap the word as you say it, one. In pious times, a priestcraft did begin. That's syllable. Okay, so you can do that to the end of the line. You have 10, 10. So if there's that regularity in the distribution of syllables, then there is meter. Okay? And so the next thing for you to do is to scan the poem. So for you to do is to scan the poem to see the pattern of stressed and unstressed syllables. So discern the pattern of stressed and unstressed syllables. Of course, we already know that this one is iambic, but there are other ways to know. For instance, this is a function which will not be stressed. And in a word like before, it is for that is stressed, so it's before. So that's the pattern. So this one is like when man, A1. Okay, so that pattern will maintain. Unstressed, stress, unstressed, stress, unstressed, stress, unstressed, stress, unstressed, stress. Okay? So, this unstressed stress is iambic. Alright? When the pattern is one unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable, is iambic. If it is the opposite, that is one stressed syllable followed by an unstressed syllable, that's what? That's one. Trochai. Oh Jesus. That's trochai. Okay? Now, when it occurs, if it occurs once in a line, that's monometer. That's monometer. If it occurs 2 times, that's 1, 2, that's diameter. If it occurs 3 times, that's 1, 2, 3, that's trimeter. If it occurs 4 times, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, that's tetrameter. And if it occurs 5 times, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's pentameter. If it occurs 6 times, that's hexameter. If it occurs 7 times, that's heptameter. If it occurs 8 times, that's Alright? So next week, when we meet, we will read the poem. So you get the poem and get ready. Have your copy. To copy the poem, you get your copy. We'll read it next week when we meet, and then we continue the discussion.